Lyttelton is a port town on the north shore of Lyttelton Harbour, at the northwestern end of Banks Peninsula and close to Christchurch, on the eastern coast of the South Island of New Zealand. Due to its establishment as a landing point for Christchurch-bound seafarers, Lyttelton has historically been regarded as the gateway to Canterbury for colonial settlers. The port remains a regular destination for cruise liners and is the South Island's principal goods transport terminal, handling 34% of exports and 61% of imports by value. In 2009, Lyttelton was awarded Category I Historic Area status by the New Zealand Historic Places Trust, NZHPT, defined as an area of special or outstanding historical or cultural heritage significance or value. According to the 2013 census, the usual resident population of Lyttelton, including neighboring communities of Rapaki, Cast Bay and Corsair Bay, was 2,859. Location: Lyttelton is the largest settlement on Lyttelton Harbour, an inlet on the northwestern side of Banks Peninsula extending 18 kilometers inland from the southern end of Pegasus Bay. The town is situated on the lower slopes of the Port Hills, which form the northern side of the harbour and effectively separate Lyttelton from the city of Christchurch. This steep-sided crater rim acts as a natural amphitheatre and a boundary to urban development. A tunnel through the Port Hills provides direct road access to Christchurch, 12 kilometers to the northwest. The town of Sumner, some 6 kilometers to the northeast, is accessed via Evans Pass. Another settlement at Governor's Bay lies 10 kilometers to the west and a ferry service connects the suburb of Diamond Harbour on the southern shore of the harbour. The uninhabited Quail Island sits in the upper harbour southwest of Lyttelton. History: a home for Maori for about 700 years, Lyttelton Harbour was discovered by European voyagers passing by on February 16, 1770 during the Endeavour's first voyage to New Zealand. Aiming to establish a Church of England colony in New Zealand, the Canterbury Association was founded in 1848. As Lyttelton was a harbour, and had a large amount of flat land suitable for farming and development nearby, it was ideal for a colony. Joseph Thomas, as the agent of the Canterbury Association and its chief surveyor, was in charge of preparing the settlement for the settlers. He initially placed the port town at Rapaki and the settlement's capital, Christchurch, and the head of the harbour at present-day Teddington, but none of these initial ideas proved feasible, as Rapaki was not available, as it had been promised to Maori as a reserve, and required reclamation at the head of the harbour, for the capital was estimated as too expensive. Early survey work in Lyttelton was done by Thomas and Charles Torres, but most of it until completion in September 1849 was done by Edward Jolly. In his diary, Jolly explains how the streets got their names. The names of the streets of the 3 towns I surveyed were taken from bishoprics, and the way it was done was this: as soon as I completed the map I took it to Thomas, who, putting on his gold spectacles and opening his, would read out a bishop's name to hear if it sounded well. If I agreed with him that it did, I put the name to one of the streets requiring baptism. Lyttelton, being the first-born town, got the best names for its streets. Sumner, being next, had the next best, and Christchurch, being the youngest, had to be content with chiefly Irish and colonial bishoprics as names for its streets. This accounts for what, to anyone not knowing the circumstances, appears strange, viz., that many of the best English bishoprics are not represented. Editorial note: not represented in Christchurch, while Irish and colonial ones are. In August 1849 it was officially proclaimed a port. Pilgrim's Rock shows the place where European settlers first set foot in the harbour. The present location of the rock is well inland from the sea, as much of Lyttelton's dockside has been reclaimed from the harbor waters in recent years. Lyttelton was formerly called Port Cooper, after Daniel Cooper, and Port Victoria. It was the original settlement in the district, 1850. The name Lyttelton was given to it in honor of George William Lyttelton of the Canterbury Association, which had led the colonization of the area. The Lyttelton Times was one of the principal newspapers of the Canterbury region for 80 years, published from 1851 until 1929, at which time it became the Christchurch Times, until publication ceased in 1935. On July 1, 1862, the first telegraph transmission in New Zealand was made from Lyttelton Post Office. In 1870, fire destroyed all the wooden buildings in Narrett Quay, on the main street of Lyttelton. The Lyttelton Timeball Station was erected in 1876 and started signaling Greenwich Mean Time to ships in the harbor that year. It was one of the world's 5 working timeball stations until it was destroyed by the June 2011 Christchurch earthquake. The castle-like building was located high on a ridge above the port with extensive views over the harbor. On January 1, 1908, the Nimrod expedition, headed by Ernest Shackleton to explore Antarctica, left from the harbor here. The Lyttelton Harbor Board was created in 1877 to be in charge of the harbor's management. It was dissolved in 1989 after the passing of the 1988 Port Companies Act, which forced it to split into 2 separate organizations, one commercial, the Lyttelton Port Company, currently owned by Christchurch City Holdings, the commercial arm of the City Council, and one non-commercial. In 1996 the Lyttelton Port Company registered on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. 2010 to 2011 earthquakes. The 2010 Canterbury earthquake damaged some of Lyttelton's historic buildings, including the Timeball Station. 16. There was some damage to the town's infrastructure, but the port facilities and tunnel quickly returned to operation. The overall quake damage was less significant than in Christchurch itself, due to the dampening effects of the solid rock that the town rests on and its moderate distance from the epicenter. Citation needed. On February 22, 2011, a magnitude 6.3 aftershock caused much more widespread damage in Lyttelton than its predecessor due to its proximity to Lyttelton and a shallow depth of 5 kilometers, 3.1 miles. Some walls of the Timeball Station collapsed and there was extensive damage to residential and commercial property, leading to the demolition of a number of high-profile heritage buildings such as the Harbour Light Theatre and the Empire Hotel. Many other unreinforced masonry buildings were severely damaged. Following the February earthquake, it was suggested that the Timeball Station be dismantled for safety reasons. Bruce Chapman, Chief Executive of the New Zealand Historic Places Trust, NZHPT, said there was a possibility that it may be reconstructed. If we can find a way to dismantle the Timeball Station that allows us to retain as much of the building's materials as possible, we will do so. However, on Monday, June 13, 2011, a further 6.3 ml aftershock brought down the tower and remaining walls while workmen were preparing to dismantle it. Much of Lyttelton's architectural heritage was lost as a result of the earthquakes, as damage was deemed too extensive for reconstruction. By June 2011, 6 buildings in London Street and Lyttelton had been demolished, along with another 4 on Narrett Quay. The town's oldest churches have collapsed, including Canterbury's oldest stone church, the Holy Trinity.